Welcome to the Empowered to Connect podcast, where we come together to discuss a healing-centered approach to engagement and well-being for ourselves, our families, and our communities.
Hey everyone, this is Jessie Ferris with Empowered to Connect, and I'm here with my friends Becca McKay and Tona Ainger.
Whoop, whoop.
Say hey guys.
Hi guys. Whoop, whoop. Hi guys.
And we have been talking, we want to talk today about this idea that we all have feelings. That's a pretty basic piece of knowledge, right? And when we all bring our feelings into a room in a family, how do we make space for those feelings? This question is kind of born out of this idea, these conversations we've been having with parents recently about, if I do that, then my kid's going to be upset. Or if I make this decision or remind them of their end of the bargain for this, then they're going to feel disappointed or they might feel mad. And we kind of want to pull that apart a little bit. I know that we all have trouble when our kids melt down or especially in the younger years with tantrums or the older years with disrespect. How do we make space for our kids to express their feelings while scaffolding them towards expressing those feelings in an emotionally healthy way? Does that make sense?
Yeah, absolutely. So this is an easy answer. So I think I can give one quick little line and then we can just be done with this episode, right? And that is oh, gracious sakes. So that's just not the case. It's so nuanced and so complex. The very first thing that comes to my mind and my heart when I think about this idea of giving our kids room to be feeling and emotional beings is, as adults, when we interact with kiddos that may be in an alerted space or, maybe some of their behavior is not something that maybe would have been okay for us when we were young or isn't the way we do it or wasn't allowed in our house or maybe isn't even what you thought would be allowed when you were thinking up being a parent or being in a family setting, or maybe you're an educator and you wouldn't run a classroom this way. It's this idea of what's acceptable. What were your expectations? And then what was expected of you? How have you brought that into the interaction? And then what are your expectations of what kids should and shouldn't do with feelings? Mm-hmm. And that is very complex, right? There's so much in just that one concept and idea. Becca, what comes to mind for you?
Okay, you guys know I just flew to California and back. Yeah. And when you were talking, Jessie, the first thing that came to my mind was we flew with an airline and there was a problem with the printing of the bag tag thing. Oh. And so everybody that was checking in at the kiosk was having to go to this very long, for special concerns line. And so when you were talking about this idea of how can kids express their feelings, I immediately was kids and adults and workers and participants. And so I'm thinking about this line that I was in and how all the people in the line were extremely annoyed. You should be able to walk in, click the button and go drop off your bag and go to TSA. And you're already mentally preparing for I have to take my shoes off and they're going to make me pull the iPad out of the bag. And you're already annoyed. And so just in the span of I don't know, the 45 minutes that we were in that line, I saw the huge scope of people that were taking it positive, it's okay, we got plenty of time. People that were our flight's in 10 minutes, please let us to the front. We're panicking. Mm-hmm. I saw kids crying. I saw kids laughing. I saw parents yelling, cussing and fussing. I saw kids yelling and cussing and fussing. And so it's just this picture of, okay, that is a big inconvenience. It's really frustrating for everyone involved, including the staff. One of the staff members made my husband and I laugh because, it's 4 people working and as there's an open spot, it's whenever you're ordering at Chick-fil-A, right? You see an open spot, you walk up to it. So this lady walked up to it and the worker said, I did not tell you to come over here. And we were okay. She's feeling dysregulated. Right. So she the lady had to walk back to the line and then wait for someone to say next, please. And so that's just an example that comes to my mind from literally this week of when we experience something we all have feelings and emotions.
Yep.
Sometimes the standards that we have for kids are even higher than the standards that we hold our own selves to as adults whenever we experience frustration.
Yep.
So what does it look like to be realistic about what's the line? Like, is it appropriate to start cussing out a worker? I don't think so in my values and my, I have like a line of like what I feel like is appropriate or not. Other people have different lines and different expectations. But first, can we just acknowledge that like people have big feelings, adults, kids, and everybody in between?
Right.
I love that that point you're making, Becca, that often we have higher standards for our kids than we have for ourselves. And like, okay, let's give ourselves the benefit of the doubt. I know that comes from like, we want our kids to be better than we are, right? We want our kids to have it better than we had it. We want them to be better people than we are. Like, we desire the very best for our kids, right? But I was even thinking about it as I was introducing the topic, because I took my kids grocery shopping this morning, and I feel like that's all I need to say about that.
Right.
But I will add that I felt grumpy. Like, I went to bed late last night out of my own poor choices, revenge procrastination. If anyone else does that.
Yep.
So I took my time, and then I paid for it dearly this morning. I was feeling so grumpy. And I was thinking about like, in my family, you're allowed to tell other people, even if you're the grown up, like, I feel really grumpy today. I'm very irritable. And like, we try and work with each other in my family when it works like that. And like, the kids are like, what that means is like, let's be a little extra sensitive towards this person today.
Yeah.
And I was struggling with it because it was like, am I allowed to ask that as a parent, or is that inappropriate? My kids aren't responsible for my feelings. My kids, like, I'm the grown up. I need to be bigger, stronger, safer, braver, all of those things. Right. And I want to pave the way of showing them like, hey, it's okay to have a bad day. It's okay to feel off. And it also challenges me in thinking like, are my kids allowed to have an off day? Like, what do we do when our kids are having a bad day?
Right.
We did a book when our kids were young called The No, No, No Day. And we love that book. So we'll refer to it sometimes of like, this is my no day. But a lot of times, especially when our kids are younger and not as good at communicating with us, like, how do we allow them to express their feelings or have an off day? I don't know. How do you guys handle that?
Even an off moment in a good day, like, like you can be having the best day and then they can have a big feeling and be like, well, this whole day was terrible. And like, you can either take that super personal and like make that really the battle, or you can go, they're pretty dysregulated. I wonder when the last time was that they had a snack. Like, they're hungry, they're tired, it's been a big day. Like, so sometimes it's an off day, and other times it's just within a day, these like roller coaster moments that happen all throughout the day. And just have that mindset of, am I taking this as you're ungrateful and disobedient and disrespectful, or am I taking it as you're dysregulated? And so that, what do I do with that? How do I step towards you?
Way back in the early beginning of this whole connected parenting journey for Mo and I think feelings were the, maybe the range of them that was happening across our family system. So it was like kids and parents, and then Mo and I, and all of these feelings and thoughts and disappointments and how they were colliding and mixing together and creating, maybe not the most emotionally safe spaces for one another. Like, I think that was actually part of our guide, that something needed to shift and change, because we were coming from a mindset that had a whole lot of thoughts and perceptions and conceptions about what feelings are and what they are not, and how much room they should have in a family or in a relationship. And so it's interesting that this is the conversation and topic for today, because it feels like an origin conversation and topic for me and my own parenting journey. It was one of the very first, if you think about it like connected parenting, like an onion with layers. This idea of feelings and how acceptable are they as an Ainger? how much leverage and room do you have as an Ainger parent, adult, spouse, and child to have a feeling and then react in that feeling? Because most often our feelings are connected to what we would classify as like reactions. It isn't until you can, somewhat practice the pause as we talk about, or regulate, or find some moment of calm that you can respond. Typically, they're connected to some sort of behavioral reaction. And then that reaction is causing a reaction in someone else. And then therefore the relationship is having a moment of stress and tension. So I don't mean to make that be like a huge theory idea, but I do think it's important for us to think about what role is my mindset as a parent or caregiver or adult playing in the way this whole feelings thing is going down. So we could talk about that. Like, what does it look like to go back and be like, what do I think about feelings and the role that they play in a family unit, and then, how is that coming out in my relationship with my kids, maybe in positive and maybe not so positive, maybe even harmful ways. So that was like one of our very first, we have some maybe recalibrating is a word I would use around feelings, and maybe some of what Mo and I thought based on our own history and past, based on our families of origin, based on the little subculture of social engagement that we were parenting our peers and people that were influencing our thoughts and feelings about what kids should and shouldn't do when they feel a feeling, So it was a lot of work. How about that? 24 years in the making.
I think I've learned so much from you and Mo, Tona, of just that we all can grow in this area. And if I were to think of this as an onion in my own life and in my own family development, learning how to feel feelings has been such a journey for me.
Yes.
And I thought I was so adept at talking about feelings, and I was pretty proficient in naming feelings. But when it came down to actually feeling my own feelings and allowing myself to sit with them non-judgmentally, and maybe even more difficult, I don't know, it would be a toss-up, whether it's more difficult to be non-judgmental and sit with my own feelings or to sit with somebody else's uncomfortable feelings. Even as we were setting up the podcast today, like we were having trouble with
a few technical difficulties.
I was joking with us, right? Of like, it's okay if you want to cry about this, Becca,
That's right. Who wants to stomp their feet right now?
I think that's why I notice it in other parents of like, I really identify in my very gut heart self with like, but my kid's going to be disappointed.
Right.
And it's like, like part of parenting, part of growing up, part of scaffolding our kids towards being an adult is like, disappointment is a feeling that we feel maybe at least once a day. Right. Like, what do we do when we feel disappointed? My kid's going to feel mad if I say that or do that. Like, and how will we be present to their feeling of anger? And how is my kid allowed to feel angry in my family? Like, if in my family, I don't let my kid yell, I don't let my kid stomp their foot, I don't let my kid roll their eyes, or like, as Becca was saying, the cussing and fussing, like, well, what is an appropriate way to express anger? And I think we figure out how to do that as individuals. We have to figure out how to do that with the adult relationships in our lives, right? And we're finding a way forward in our families and parenting with our kids, that is just that's really hard for me. And to me, it all comes back to like how I feel about that, which is usually tied in with my attachment style, right? And all that stuff that was baked in.
And there's just no one size fits all. So when you're talking about yourself and how you process feelings, Jessie, I, like, from the moment I can remember, have been the most sensitive. Like, anything can make me cry, like, from when I was little. And I feel like what I learned as a kid was like, you're too sensitive. Don't do that. But it's like also what makes me a good listener and a good friend and caring about other people's feelings. And so I've had to learn how to like embrace my feelings as I've gotten older without letting them like dictate everything, my beliefs, or like without letting them have so much power over me that it's just impossible to take a step forward. And then you think about like, there was 4 of us in my family. And so my parents parented us and we're pretty close together, and they had 4 very different expressions and ways of feeling feelings. Like my siblings were not as sensitive as I was. And so it was different. Like, so just for parents to hear, like, there's not one way that a whole family is going to experience feelings or like need to express them or process them. And that's okay. Like, it's okay that it looks different with different relationships, but even today, like, it's hard. I think we just have to learn, what is the way forward? You know, for me, when I'm feeling disappointed, what is the way forward that helps me, doesn't dismiss, but also doesn't get entangled, using those attachment language words? What is okay for the kids in our care? And I think it's a process and it's a journey, but I feel like, when you were talking about your own onion layer, I was just processing my own self and how like, man, I remember when I was little being told, quit crying, not just by my parents. My parents loved me. They gave me lots of hugs and like soothed me and all the things, but just in general,
those like subtle shaming messages of like, you're crying
culture
too much.
And society and your teachers and the other kids. And so there is a message in culture that's like, just get on with it. Just move on. Like, whether it's you're too excited, it's not always a sad or mad feeling. Sometimes it's, you're doing too much. Like, you need to chill out. Like you're making other people uncomfortable. And so just, what's the appropriate way to express big feelings as a kid, as an adult, as a parent, as a kid? Like, how does that look in our different families? And I just love the idea that it's connected to our attachment, that it's unique to us, and that it's a scaffolded process. Those are things you've said, Jesse, throughout. Like, it's a journey of just taking those little steps and like, what is the okay way for kids to express that they're mad in the Ferris house, in the Ainger house, in the McKay house, in your house?
Yeah.
I'm curious, guys, what's your knee-jerk reaction when a kid is having a big feeling that doesn't feel great to you? What's your knee-jerk reaction, and what do you guys do? It doesn't even have to be a kid. It could be just a person in your life. What do you do to kind of support yourself to show up and be present for that person?
That's a great question, Jesse. It's interesting because I still feel like I go back to those early days of like, we put feelings charts in our kitchen on the wall and found myself being the one that was most often looking at them, trying to discover what was going on in me. Because so it harks back to your question of like, when my kids had a big feeling, or I was trying to find my way through, like, what does it mean to reset and like actually let a kid have a feeling? What's a respectful and appropriate amount of behavior connected to a feeling? I mean, these are big parenting philosophies. These are not simple things to process. So I found myself staring at the board going, oh, I think that my knee jerk is anger. And we had a whole chart that was just everything that anger masks, you know? So then I was like, okay, next question is, where's the anger coming from? Yeah. And then most often it was then, and I'm sure it is still very much now, connected to some unmet expectation. So my knee jerk is probably to control or manage the moment somehow. Probably different for different kids, different for different feelings. Fix it, support, nurture, move along. Like, I'm sure I'm wanting to show up with like a lot of managerial support in positive and maybe not so positive ways. So probably to get things moving and back on track, you know? So just like hanging out and like taking a deep breath and sitting and being like really, really still is a challenge for me, but it is sometimes what's needed. Like, you sometimes don't need to push and do the most to help a kid that's having a feeling. Yeah. Sometimes they need you to do the least, you know? So I have a hard time doing the least. I'm very good at doing the most. So that's my answer.
That's good, Tona. I think my knee jerk, I think it depends on the feeling. Like, I think I'm more okay. Like, if a kid is having a big feeling that's like, I'm really excited, I can like see the joy in it, even if it's annoying. Like, it doesn't really bug me. But if they're having a big feeling that's like sad, then it's really hard for me not to get sad. Like, it's hard for me not to over identify and jump right on that emotional roller coaster and be like, I'm sad with you. Like too much, to where I'm not co-regulating anymore. I'm just like
riding the
sad with
emotional
you.
train.
Yeah.
Like, let's go.
Versus like mad feelings. My knee jerk is more like to get super, probably just from working where I've worked and being a social worker. Like I get very much into de-escalate, calm, cool, and collected. What do I need to do here to get you back down? Like it's,
you go into like your logic brain.
Yeah. I go into
very
like super
left
calm
brain.
Yeah. Like super calm. How am I like going to tread lightly and make this, help soothe this kiddo or whatever it is with kids, especially. So I think my knee jerk is different depending on the thing, but I think I've grown a lot because I think my knee jerk with kids, if I'm thinking about like, if you're asking a kid to do something and their response is, let's say the eye rolling, the whining, the tantrum, the stomping the feet, those types of things that can be really frustrating or can really push your buttons as an adult. Those things used to bug me a lot more because I was not allowed as a kid to be mad or upset by a directive given by not just my parents, but any adult. Like that was a no-no. It was you obey, period. So whenever I then started working with kids, I was like, wait, not every kid operates like this. Like, what is like, no, you don't
There
get
is
to.
some other internal operating system?
Like what? This is like, what is this iOS? I don't know it. And so awesome. I think I've grown a lot because of being exposed to Empowered to Connect principles, even before I worked here, like learning that there's other things that are driving behaviors. Like I think I used to just see that as disobedient, defiant behavior. And I need to make you stop and tell you what's what and give you a lecture or take control, whatever it is. So I feel like that one for me has changed a lot over the last, 10 years of just being exposed to this kind of thinking, because it really is that mindset shift. It's okay. I'm asking you to do something hard. For example, when I was working in a school, like a math worksheet, if you move towards the math worksheet and you're rolling your eyes and you're grumbling under your breath, but you're moving towards the math worksheet, there's something to praise there. Like there's something we can build off of. There's some like good momentum there. Or my previous self, I would be like, you can try that again without the grumbling, sir. Like that was my like programming. So I had to update my iOS to like be able to engage in a different way when we're thinking about those types of feelings.
Yeah. Jessie, I'm curious about this for you. How would you answer that question?
Oh, I think it was such a game changer for me, y'all, when I learned. I had always been a little confused about what my attachment style default might have been. And when I learned that it was avoidant dismissive because I want to avoid people's emotions, including my own, the way that was coming, I had always viewed avoidant dismissive attachment style as like robotic, cold, unfeeling, unwilling to talk about emotions. And I was like, well, that's not me. I'm a very warm, I'm a very emotive person. I like to talk about emotions. What I didn't realize until the last handful of years is I want to fix every bad feeling emotion around me in myself and in other people. So it's like Becca's having trouble with the mic and I'm going to offer her like 6 suggestions because I really just hate the idea that she would be starting to feel frustrated or mad. I think the hardest feeling for me to withstand is anger. I want to please that person as soon as possible to finish the anger. I want it to be gone and done. And I think growth for me in the last handful of years has been like, you feel mad about this. I'm present to that. And I think some of the middle part for me was having to just voice it in an awkward way. Like,
yes, it feels so awkward.
I just had
embrace
to like
the awkward.
Awkwardly like voicing what was internal for me. Otherwise I would do it without thinking. So I was saying things like, I wish I could make your mad go away, but that's not appropriate. And so I'm going to sit here.
Yeah. And
but
you're like, that's too many words.
Right?
Totally.
Like, that's
you're
not
like,
right.
Sorry, that was my internal stream of consciousness coming out of my mouth. Sorry about that.
It was a lot of exactly right. And I was just a weirdo for a good long while. I'm maybe still sitting there, but I think what's slowly been happening over the years now is like, I know it's okay for that teenager to feel annoyed. Or I know it's okay for that teenager to feel disappointed. And like, how do I meet them in the disappointment And I'm just always gauging it. Like, am I trying to fix this so it will go away?
Yes.
Or am I trying to engage them where they are so they can process what they're feeling? It's really tricky though, y'all. Like
basically you're meeting them in the middle while having about 15 internal dialogue conversations going on. So this is where I said, man, oh man, it's the most, like, maybe y'all are sitting here listening going, okay, guys, like that's a whole lot of stuff. It is, but I would just say, like, it's the richness and the connection and to yourself and to your children and to those that are in your family and your friends. Like, it feels like this is kind of where the good stuff is, right? To sort of be willing to go a little deeper and reflect inward. And then when you have opportunities to practice, which is all the time, if you're parenting or in some sort of child caregiving, even job, like I'm sure you have times all the time to do this sort of self-evaluating and move into a place where you're doing more responding than reacting, which Jessie, you just explained, like what the mental process is, like how that really looks. Is you're sitting and you're taking stock and you're reflecting on your own motivations and what's happening inside of you, and you're measuring the words at which you're offering the person you're being present with. And it takes time. Maybe that's what I would say. If this is not something that you're typically used to practicing, go so easy on yourself. Like, be gentle with you, even in the stumbling through, awkwardly trying to do it, because if this is not your normal MO or the family of origin or like something that feels like second nature to you, it's going to come out clumsy. And you may even have some bumps, but that's good.
Yeah, it's almost like parenting ourselves, right?
100,000%.
Child selves. Because if someone all those years ago, when I was little Jessie, had said, okay, I know you're trying to move on, but I can tell you feel a feeling about this.
Yes.
And I'm here for it if you want to share it with me. Yeah. Like, I think that's what I'm trying to do for myself now. Mm-hmm. Like, okay, self, you're feeling a feeling about this. It's okay. Why don't you share that? I know that
share that with
weird.
Yourself, and then be present for your child.
Myself.
Yeah.
But it's like parenting our little kid selves for a second so that we can pass that forward to our own kids.
Yep.
Ding. Yeah. Okay. Here's what I want to know. I think maybe you got us started on this a little bit, Tona, but circle back to it too. Yeah. What is one way you want to encourage parents and something you want to challenge them about when it comes to being present to their little and big kids' emotions?
Becca, do you want to start us off on that?
I want to encourage parents that there's not one way.
Yeah.
So and that's, you've listened to us for long. We say that all the time, but here's what I mean by that. Like, some kids need a hand on their back. Some kids need space. Some kids need you to sit down and ask questions. Some kids don't. So don't get stuck on the process as much as seeing your child. What are the things that are, having them experience big feelings? What are the things that are bringing that up in them? What is that doing to you? How are you processing your reactions to their big feelings? What would it look like to move towards them and offer a way forward towards being connected to that feeling? Like, yeah, you're mad, man. I get why you'd be mad. I'm here with you. Like, what does that feel like? Or, with a little toddler, maybe it's, hey bud, let's get a snack. Like, maybe it is a little bit more of a redirection. So there's not one way forward from the big feeling. It's really, really just about taking steps towards the kiddo instead of becoming adversarial or like against them in their emotions. The challenge I would give is that emotions are tricky and we live on pendulums, and the pendulum that we live on with emotions, and maybe I want to say three things, so maybe that's not a pendulum, but I think tendencies, we tend to walk on eggshells around kids because we're afraid of taking them off.
Yep.
And I think that's a dangerous way to parent or care for kids, because if we are walking on eggshells, in a world with no limits, or everything is acceptable because I don't want to tick you off, that can be dangerous whenever the kid is 28 and they need to fly and the luggage tag is taking a long time. Like, that could lead to a really bad situation in the airport if a person has never had practice working through that disappointment and frustration, right?
I'll go into this too, because I think sometimes we walk on eggshells and call it nurture. That's not what nurture is.
Exactly.
Right?
Yeah.
So what you go ahead with your thought, Becca, but it's right on.
Maybe it's connected, maybe it's not, but I think we can walk on eggshells, or we can become overly involved, as I was, in my sad feelings of like feeling exactly what the kiddo is feeling and not staying regulated ourselves. So I think and you might call that nurture. Well, I'm just showing empathy. There's a point where, as the adult, you have to find a way to stay regulated yourself. And if you can't do that, you're not helping co-regulate. You're just in it with them. And so I used to talk with parents a lot about the emotional roller coaster that kids were on. And I would tell them to tell themselves, I am too tall for this ride. That doesn't mean I don't care about my kid who's on the ride. But if I'm jumping on the roller coaster with them, then we are both freaking out. Like, it is not helpful for anyone. So I think we can do eggshells. We can ride the emotional roller coaster. And then the last thing you've spoken to so well, Jessie, is just not being willing to even touch feelings with a 10-foot pole. So I would challenge parents to find, where are you? Are you the eggshell walker? Are you the 10-foot pole or the roller coaster? And then depending on where you are, that will inform your next step. If you're a roller coaster rider, you don't need to hear, get really close to your kid's feelings. You need to hear, take deep breaths while you're sitting in the room so that you stay calm. But if you're the 10-foot pole person, you need to be told, okay, put the phone down, put the dishes down, and go sit with your kiddo. It's okay that they're sad and mad. That's okay. So just, it depends on where you are, where I think you should start. So take the challenge that feels right for you as a parent.
I made a few notes Jessie, when you asked that before, Becca, and literally they're exactly in alignment with what she just said, which maybe isn't a horrible surprise. I was feeling something connected, but you said it so well, Becca. It was connected to this idea of like nurturing, AKA connected parenting. And sometimes those things we don't always see that connected parenting is a balance of nurture and structure. So I want to bring that into this conversation, because having a family that allows emotions doesn't mean that all structure goes out the window. So I appreciate this nuanced idea of like, are you more left brain about it? Are you more right brain about it? The word you would say is, do you stay away from it, or do you jump on the roller coaster, or are you avoiding it altogether? Like, those are just parental stress responses. It's just another way of saying fight, flight, freeze, or fawn as it relates to the big feelings and the behaviors that are connected to those feelings and how they come out with our kids. So maybe my last thought, if I could just sort of not see if it's an encouragement or a challenge, would be that parenting well does not mean your kids are not going to have big feelings.
Yeah.
Quote unquote, parenting well doesn't mean there won't be meltdowns. Parenting well doesn't mean there's not going to be massive disappointment. It is finding your balance and how that particular child and you are dancing together and trying to assess what's going on in you and what they might need, and then responding in measure and measured to whatever it needs. So sometimes big feelings need a strong response, not mean, not unkind, but strong, and in your own 2 feet, holding whatever ground needs to be held for whatever way with that kiddo. Sometimes that can be the most regulating. Sometimes the whiny love needs you to slow down and get on your knee and say, I think you might be having a bit of a hard day. Would you like a hug? And then there's a puddle of tears and a big hug. Like our very best connected parenting self does not avoid the feelings. And we measure our response to meet the needs of the child while taking care of ourselves. And usually that's done in reflecting afterwards. So what activates me? What do I run from? What do I pull towards? What swirls me up? What roller coasters do I have a tendency to jump on? And if you have multiple children, or if you're taking care of or teaching multiple kids, it's going to be different for every child. So maybe my encouragement would be just be gentle on yourself and see the patterns. I mean, my biggest epiphany with my relationship with one of our children happened because I saw myself having a similar reaction in a friendship. And I was able to put words on it in a safe way with a caring, safe adult. And then I was able to see that pattern in myself and how it might also be happening with my child when they express a feeling in the same way. Because the child relationship was so close, I couldn't see it clearly. I just was so mixed up in it. So I think that it really is about a personal discovery. And like I said, still 24 years in. So my encouragement would be hang out for the long haul, and you're going to look up 5 years and 10 years and 20 years, and you will not regret. You will not regret being reflective and thoughtful about this thing called feelings and emotions and how it plays out in your family and relationships.
That's good. My experience to our caregivers listening is that it's okay if you don't have this all settled today.
Yeah.
Like, it's okay that you need to grow, because we all need to grow. We will all be growing our entire lives in this area, right? So it's okay. It's okay to show up on not your best day. It's okay to show up just with what you have in any given moment. And it's okay to identify areas that you would like to grow in and start making efforts to do that. Like, yeah. I think when I think about what I want my kids to carry away from their experience in my family with me as their caregiver, I know not very much of it is going to be things that I said or even specific things I did. And all those things I did, that can be kind of depressing to think about. But I think most of it's going to be like the experience of my presence with them. Right?
That's right.
And like, that is, how did I show up? How did I show up in those moments when they were dysregulated? How did I show up in those moments when I was dysregulated, or we were both dysregulated in our emotions and our bodies and whatever? Knowing that it's okay to say no to them and be present to that emotion of their disappointment.
Yep.
And I guess that would be my challenge is, you've heard it from Becca and Tona already, but there is a giant difference between having a goal of a well-behaved child who is pushing down every negative feeling they have inside of them in order to comply with what you require, and having a well-integrated child who can express appropriately what they need, negotiate their needs, and remain connected to you. And I think that there is even a picture of obedience in that as well. Like, right? So I think I would challenge you to think, if you see our title, a lot of these things that we talk about, we sign off as meltdowns, tantrums, unacceptable, disrespect. And I think I would ask us to reconsider, is it disrespect or is it an expression of a feeling? And how can we scaffold our kids towards expressing their feelings in appropriate ways, right? So that, like Becca's saying, when they get up to that airline counter, they're able to negotiate their needs in a way that is effective and important. And I don't know, that's the ultimate goal. It's so hard to do in the moment every day. And I know you guys are in it. It's especially when you're really in it, when you're in a season when a kid is growing and learning a lot about this, it can feel brutal. And I just want to encourage you, just keep showing up, do what you need to do for yourself to keep showing up, and balance that nurture and structure, like Tona is saying.
hey, Jesse, you've just brought something to mind. I know we're sort of finishing up, but when you said like there's a kiddo that could have it all shoved down versus one, that can manage it in appropriate ways. I want to just speak to, that's a spectrum that's really messy from one end to the other. Yeah. And as much as I said earlier, like be gracious with yourself as you're discovering. I cannot overstate the importance of scaffolding that process and being very compassionate and gracious with your kiddos as they're learning. So this idea of regulation or whatever would be an acceptable response to an emotion, it's going to be real messy before it's not messy anymore. And that messiness is where we get to meet them. And the idea of show me, don't teach me is coming to mind here. Like, what does it mean for our children to see us model and be with them while they're learning how to manage disappointment or anger or frustration or sadness or grief? We often want to lecture them through. And it really is so much about modeling and showing and being present. And maybe my little encouragement would be, it works. It works with all kinds of rages. All kinds of ranges. It does work with rages too. So that was a little Freudian slip. It works with rages. I have some experience with such things. It works with ranges and ages and so many different kind of kiddos. So it's been a gift to see Mo and I and even our children grow through those different developmental ages and stages when they are given the freedom to have feelings in inappropriate ways or redirected when it's inappropriate, but not asked to bottle up. So find your way.
Even, you were saying it gets messy and then they learn that. My experience is even as they grow into a new developmental stage, it might get messy again.
It does usually get messy again, but there's hope because you've seen some progress.
Exactly.
But
they know the way forward.
It's the long game. Play the long game here. Man, this is a good topic. We probably could keep talking for maybe 3 or 4 more episodes about such things.
For our 15-part series.
That's right. On the onion of feelings.
All right. As we get ready to close, my favorite question for anyone is always, what are you reading these days?
Oh.
So I'd love to know what's something you've been reading in the past couple months that has really just sparked your interest that you'd love to share with everybody else.
That's awesome. Becca, you want to go first?
Nope.
Okay. So I have, this is going to tell you something about myself. I had like 6 Audible credits that were like getting, they were just kind of racking up in my Audible. And we've been doing some house projects at home. I have literally in the last 3 weeks listened to 5 thrillers. And for some reason, and I can't even tell you the names of them. It's like Lady Across the Lake or The House Across the Lake or The Lady That Disappeared or Alice Forgot Everything. I don't even know the titles of them. But you know what I'm talking about? Yes. Alice Doesn't Remember or something. I have and I think Becca, you were going on vacation. I think I even texted you. I was like, I have all these Audible books if you need something to listen to. And I took a break and stepped away and I was like, why have I bought 6 straight horror thriller suspense books? So I went to lunch with a friend last week and we were just talking about podcasts and true crime stuff. And we had no answer. We were just sitting there eating Mexican food and we were like, why do we like really dark things? And we were like, I don't know. We had no good insight.
You're not the only person. There are listeners right now that are like, yes, that is.
It's jam. All the true crime thriller stuff. I say that tongue in cheek. Maybe it makes me feel better about my life. I'm like, well, it's not that bad. Okay, it's not that bad. So my standard of what isn't that bad must be real, real low. So that's what I'm listening to. I don't know if it's given me life or taking my life, but it's keeping me. It's keeping me entertained.
Intensity from your story.
That's probably what it is, Jess. It has to have like high level of intensity and psycho thrillers. And I got to think about why are they doing that? You know? So I can't, all the titles.
If you've got a good thriller, send it to Tona.
Yeah. The titles, the storylines are all meshed up because I literally like binged 6 full audiobooks in like the last 4 weeks. Okay. That's all I got.
Mine is similar but different, which is that while I was on vacation, I discovered that because I have Amazon Prime, there's like a lending library on Kindle. I didn't know.
What?
It's called Prime Reading. So it's not, it's not your like 5-star best books of all time.
It's not the new hardback fiction that's hitting
asking
the
for
bookstore.
your Pulitzer recommendations.
Totally best. And I actually, off the top of my head, I'm same as Tana. I can't remember the titles, but I read like 3 just like free Prime reading books, like on the plane rides while I was at the beach. So anyways, this is a new discovery for me. I'm more of a paperback person, but I have run out of space in my home. And so my sweet dad got me a Kindle and he was like, you like to read, just keep reading, but let's keep it here. And so there was one that was a thriller. There was one that was a super cheesy love story. One that was about like a vacation went wrong kind of thing. And so I just was reading like, mid-level books, but for free, which is my speed. So
I love it.
Free.
All right, Jess, what about you? Because you're always, Jesse's our book person around here.
I'm a book person and I have a stack of things I'm reading. I'll tell you, I've been loving the City Spies series that is a children's book series. I've been reading it with my youngest kiddo and we really enjoy it. The audiobooks are awesome. And sometimes we listen instead of me reading. But now that I know the accents of everybody, I've been trying to read it myself. So,
oh my gosh, that's funny. With accents?
Yes.
Oh my gosh, stop. And she lets you do that.
She does. She allows it.
That's pretty amazing.
She has told me she misses the audiobook. So my days may be numbered.
That's awesome. She's like, mom's not cutting it anymore.
I usually have a nonfiction going. The one I just finished that I've been telling everybody about is The Anxious Generation by Jonathan Haidt. Is it Haidt? Something like that. But it's very buzzy right now. And I've been thinking a lot about it. And then I'll say
Hey, Jesse, can I respond to this really quick?
Yes,
I think
please,
I told you this. So I was standing in the bookstore like 2 weeks ago and I started to pull The Anxious Generation off the bookshelf because everybody's talking about it. I did this like moment of self-reflection. I was like, will reading The Anxious Generation make me anxious? Yes, it will. And I reshelved it. It was like, I think I've done this. I think I have a handle. And I walked away. So I was like, no anxiety for this generation. But anyway, I need the Cliff Notes because I opted out of reading it. But everybody's talking about it so much right now. I know it's
intimidating
so
to read. It's a little bit like putting a WWJD tag on your car or something, and then like feeling like you're on the hook to drive the way Jesus would, or whatever connects with your holding yourself accountable.
Yeah.
Anyways,
okay. Anyway, you were going to say something else. I'm sorry. I just thought it was so funny. Anxious Generation was going to make me anxious.
Y'all have, we're talking about some things you tore through, and summer is for rom-com for me. So I've probably read like 5 or 6 rom-com books that I had been saving up and just tearing through them. So fun. I love to sit out on my front porch and just love reading something light and fluffy.
I love that. I did start actually reading The Covenant of Water. Have you guys heard of that book?
I've heard of it. So good.
It's massive. And I think that's the night I did not buy The Anxious Generation. I bought The Covenant of Water.
There you go.
And told myself I'd read it over the summer. I'm going to just tell myself I get to finish that one in December, Christmas. But instead I was like, that's a very good book. And now I'm going to listen to Audible of people killing each other.
Lighthearted.
Yeah.
We all have sweet spots. Okay.
I know.
Thanks for sharing that, guys, and indulging me in my nerdy interests. And thank you all for listening.
Yeah.
And we hope that you'll join us next time.
Thanks, Jess.
We hope you enjoyed the episode. If you're interested in learning more, head to empoweredtoconnect.org for our library of resources. Thank you to Kyle Wright, who edits and engineers all of our audio, and Tad Jewett, the creator of our music. On behalf of everyone at ETC, thanks for listening, and we'll see you next time on the Empowered to Connect podcast. In the meantime, let's hold on to hope together.